Welcome to a special Faith Nation focusing on the humanitarian crisis on America's southern border and the ripple effect across the country. I'm John Jessup.
And from the CBN studio in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. The southern border has become one of the biggest political issues this election year, creating pressure for presidential candidates and Congress to act. It's also one of the most divisive topics in the nation. But many faith leaders say it's time for the harsh rhetoric to end, calling instead for a balanced approach to border solutions. CBN's Heather Sells reports.
For President Biden, this growing problem is becoming a political nightmare. Last year's record crossings have resulted in migrants being bused to crowded cities, earning him the wrath of Democratic governors and mayors. For GOP presidential candidates, it's potentially a winner. Polling shows Republicans leading on the immigration issue and former President Trump gaining some ground among Latino voters. In recent weeks, however, Trump's words on immigrants have taken an extreme turn.
They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done.
Some church leaders are pushing back, like former Trump faith advisor Sam Rodriguez.
That rhetoric does not in any way, form, or shape activate the Hispanic electorate, which is naturally conservative. That community will be alienated if you continue to push them against the wall by deeming immigrants as a poison.
We're called to consider this issue of immigration very thoughtfully, but one to do so with compassion and love.
Mile Green, the president of World Relief, calls that kind of talk unbiblical. He also cites polling that shows Christians support immigration reform.
We know that from a public policy standpoint that many evangelical Christians want to see substantive, meaningful policy change. And what we're getting from presidential candidates is rhetoric that is meant to divide people and cause fear in people's hearts.
Trump has touted an immigration policy that is tougher than challengers Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. He has promised the largest deportation campaign in U.S. history, and he's calling for blocking people with certain beliefs from entering the U.S.
This comes as anti-persecution groups like Open Doors warn that Christians fleeing violence are struggling to find countries that will take them in.
The doors are closing for persecuted Christians around the world, many of whom were trying to utilize the southern border as a path to enter this country, fleeing religious persecution in other parts of the world.
Green says those with legitimate claims need a clear path to asylum. Meanwhile, evangelist Franklin Graham is putting a spiritual priority on the border, planning a 10-city tour this spring. Rodriguez says he is hoping for a presidential campaign that acknowledges the need for border security and reform and includes the vital role of immigrants.
Immigrants are a blessing to America. Without immigration, we would not have America.
Heather Sells, CBN News.
Chicago's mayor says a migrant surge has hit his city at breaking point, and he's pleading to Congress for help, feeling the overwhelming weight of being a sanctuary city.
His CBN contributing correspondent Paul Petit shows us how area churches and ministries are helping pick up the slack.
More than 300,000 migrants crossed the U.S.-Mexico border in December, according to data from U.S. Customs and Border Protection. That's the highest monthly total since 2000, and now its effects are being felt here in Chicago, sending this sanctuary city in a scramble to keep up with the influx. Migrants and asylum seekers sit waiting for a hot breakfast and donated clothing at this church on Chicago's west side.
It is not unusual for them to get up at 3:30 in the morning to get on the L at 4 because it might be 2 hours for them to get here.
And at those hours in January, it's usually below freezing.
They'll arrive here wearing T-shirts and sandals, and we're in Chicago.
Area Catholic churches, many of them partnering with the city of Chicago, are working to keep up with the recent influx of migrants.
We've had upwards toward 300 people come on a given day.
The vast majority do come from Venezuela, but we also get people coming from Ecuador and from Colombia. They are also fleeing oppression. A lot of them are fleeing the drug cartels.
Saul is an attorney from Venezuela. He says his family left the country out of fear of the authoritarian government.
En Venezuela, soy abogado.
I am an attorney, and things were very difficult in Venezuela. I felt that me and my family were at risk of persecution.
In the last year and a half, over 26,000 migrants have arrived here. Saul says Chicago's sanctuary city status is the reason he came.
Sometimes they don't have a choice. They are just sent on a bus, and the bus is headed to a sanctuary city like Chicago.
Last month, Texas sent unannounced busloads of migrants, some even on a chartered jet to Illinois. The city then bused them to its migrant landing zone. These unexpected newcomers have Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson fuming at Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
The reckless and, quite frankly, the unsafe behavior of the governor of Texas has caused a great deal of trepidation.
But organizers and volunteers here say they have to set politics aside at a time like this.
I've been saying to people, this is not a political issue for us. These are people who are in need and in care, and we're answering the gospel message.
St. Edmunds began its ministry to help the nearby YMCA and Oak Park Police, which operates shelters for the migrants. Now it's an interdenominational effort.
It is the most beautiful interfaith effort. We have the Presbyterians, the Congregationalists, the Methodists.
And here on the northwest side of Chicago, City Line Bible Church is partnering with World Relief Chicagoland. Church leaders say many of their first arrivals have found jobs and moved into apartments. Some are now serving at the church. But a breaking point is on the horizon as more buses arrive from Texas. Mayor Johnson says his city and 27 shelters are near capacity. In November, Johnson opposed a 60-day limit for migrants to stay at those shelters. Today, many are near that limit.
Without significant intervention from the federal government, this mission will not be sustained.
In Chicago, Paul Petit, CBN News.
The growing problem of sex trafficking at the border. More of our Faith Nation special on the southern border right after this. In America, about 20% of sex trafficking victims pass through Texas, and one small-town sheriff's office has a strong message to those behind the crime. Not in our backyard.
That's right. Police are aggressively enforcing a state law that makes buying sex a felony. Tara Mergener rode along with Texas sheriff's deputies to bring us this story. A warning, though, some of what you're about to see is disturbing.
Texas is the first state in the country to make buying sex a felony. It's a crime that can be easy to miss unless you know what you're looking for, with the victim often punished too. But not here in McLennan County, where a sheriff's office detective is changing the game.
Sex trafficking often conjures up images of big city crime committed quietly under the cover of darkness. But it's happening in small towns too.
It's almost easier to order a human being than it is a piece of pizza at this point.
Often in plain sight.
We keep the heat turned up and hammer down on them.
Put your hand up now, smoke your
McLennan County sits between Dallas and Austin.
Is this a case where don't mess with Texas applies?
Don't mess with Texas, yes, especially Central Texas.
With a sheriff's office in Waco making sex for sale risky business.
We'll see very often where they're saying don't go to Waco because you run the risk of getting caught. So we're just going to one of the local motels. We got a text message from a guy who found the sex ad we had posted.
Since launching a human trafficking task force in 2014, Detective Joe Scaramucci's two-man team has been using internet savvy and a finely tuned ground game to round up hundreds of suspects.
We target traffickers, we target buyers.
Routinely outpacing larger law enforcement agencies.
Slide on out here for me, guy. Put the phone down.
I haven't seen one yet that's presented a reason why we're like, oh, yeah, we're not going to arrest you. What's your rank in the military?
Sergeant. Hey, you even got love notes from your wife and your lunch kit. Yeah.
I can't do this. Please, I have to go home.
If we can take the buyers out, then we can also kind of decrease the amount of trafficking. Most of the time, law enforcement isn't doing that. 10-4, and wrap to the jail.
Regular stings include Scaramucci posing online as a sex worker to lure buyers looking for a tryst.
So I'm telling him for a half hour to engage in full sexual intercourse is $140.
Even if you don't show up, chances are we're able to work it backwards and get an arrest warrant and go pick you up.
Hey, what's up, man? It's a felony.
It's a felony? I have to tell you something.
What?
I just got arrested.
No, that is not what happened. Several sex buyers have been picked up right here just in the last few days. All are taken straight to jail. As of September 1, it's a felony.
Yeah. Yep, go right over here.
You know that paying for sex
No,
is
it is very
illegal.
illegal, yes.
Do you know it's a felony in Texas?
I did not know that.
What? When we get in there, I'll take them off.
Does it ever shock you how young some of these people are?
It's heartbreaking that 18-year-old, 19, and 20-year-old kids are showing up doing this kind of stuff.
Law enforcement is currently unjustly targeting women.
Scaramucci is the only officer who testified in support of Texas's new law cracking down on predators and shifting blame away from victims.
So this website aggregates sex ads just from all over the internet.
Ads selling the same woman across state lines, tattoos consistent with prostitution, and photos other than selfies are telltale signs. The majority of victims are female, lured into prostitution.
And then there's a girl that I've been watching for a while.
This one features an X-rated video with a man Scaramucci believes is her pimp. Quick detective work reveals the two are at a nearby motel.
When are y'all hop in with me real fast?
Should we change your locations?
We catch up with them at a gas station. His young family is along for the ride. The woman who says she's addicted to meth confirms he's been selling her since they met and keeping the money.
She was homeless. He found her at a local intersection walking down the street, picked her up, gave her a place to stay.
What is mega personals?
But like other women snared in Scaramucci's bus, she'll get help, not jail time.
This is gonna go as well.
Most of the women that we rescue don't want to be prostitutes. They get pushed into it or lured into it by the traffickers. These people are slick.
On standby are members of Unbound Now, which recently opened the state's second safe house for girls.
Help get them medical, food, shelter, just walk with them and then do case management.
When the unit shut down massage parlors in the county a few years ago,
another Waco massage parlor has been raided.
Not one sex worker faced charges.
They feed you drugs. You give them their money, they make sure you have your drugs, and nobody gets hurt.
Traffickers prey on people of all ages and backgrounds.
Befriending and then trying to figure out what.
Not only is McLennan's no-nonsense approach to the problem getting media recognition and prestigious awards, international law enforcement agencies are reaching out to learn from its success.
It's a cat and mouse game. You're trying to duck me, I'm trying to find you. And we got to get help for a victim of trafficking, right? So that's a huge success on our part.
Still, the work is daunting.
If you can get that one sexual deviant that is hitting up the 12-year-old girl, there's going to be 10, 20, 30 more behind them.
In Texas alone, tens of thousands of victims are minors, many peddled through the darkest corners of the internet.
Yeah, my name's Joe Scaramucci. I'm a detective with the Sheriff's Office in Waco, Texas.
This time, the trail leads to a retail employee in another state.
Well, the problem is I have your IP address. That's why I'm contacting you.
Especially troubling to law enforcement is the rising number of parents willing to sell their own children to predators.
It says 65 notifications.
When Scaramucci enters a chat room claiming to be a father of two, willing to make a deal, the phone lights up.
And these are from people wanting to have sex with kids?
These are for people wanting to engage in sex with kids or trade child pornography.
We're able to identify those children in many cases and get them help that they would have never had help with anyway.
Recovery from being trafficked is difficult. Their life has really been robbed from them through a lot of complex trauma. Survival
rates for any age are low, with an average life expectancy just 7 years. While keeping as many as possible from becoming a statistic, Scaramucci hopes this message will spread, not in my backyard.
Community members, get loud, right? Tell your police department or your sheriff's office, we know what's going on here. What are you doing to combat it?
An online sting operation.
A prostitution sting in Waco has landed 17 people in jail.
McLennan County Sheriff's Office arrested 15 men.
And they plan to keep those efforts going to eradicate human trafficking in the community.
Soliciting prostitution in Texas carries a maximum $10,000 fine and up to 2 years behind bars. A number of states are also weighing strengthening their laws now as well. In McLennan County, Texas, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Coming up, the nationwide ramifications of failing border policy. The crisis at the southern border has far-reaching repercussions. One you may not know of, an epidemic of workers forced to do labor on illegal marijuana farms.
Yeah, these farms are threatening California's water supply and creating cartel dangers. Chuck Holton reports.
The impact of migrants pouring across the U.S. southern border is reaching here in Humboldt County, California, helping fuel a rise in illicit cannabis operations staffed by undocumented workers. Instead of escaping poverty and oppression, many migrants often find a rude awakening here in America.
So modern-day slavery is happening here. Labor trafficking is a major deal here when it comes to marijuana. Like I said, it's something to where, you know, this is still very much organized crime. And we have organized crime and syndicates from all over the world that are here in California that are invested in growing marijuana illegally and funneling them through the markets, again, throughout America and throughout the world. And so they're bringing in their own labor and they're forcing them here to work against their will, and sometimes they're sold into sex slavery, sometimes they're just used for labor. And we even had a case here about 10 years ago where we had 2 people from Guatemala that were shot.
It's not just that these illegal marijuana grows here in California are a driver of 70% of all of the illegal marijuana consumed in the United States. It's also not just a driver of a whole lot of illegal migration to work those grows. But one of the biggest problems caused by these illegal grows is right here, what you see behind me. The very precious resource of clean, clear, drinkable water here in California as they come off a 100-year drought. These plants take a lot of water, and they take a lot of this drinking water off the table for the consumers here in the Golden State.
This stuff is obviously, we have a regulated market now in California under Prop 64. Many states have regulated cannabis, but this is the illegal stuff that will never be allowed. It's on public and private land. It's not grown with permits. It's not organic. It has deadly pesticides on it, some of them, brother, that are so deadly they were banned by the EPA in America 20 years ago. In addition to the health threat posed by pesticides, the men running these secret farms are often armed and aggressive. They're armed. They don't, want to give up in many times. There's a lot of poisons that we run across, and exposure could be deadly. And actually on the private lands, it's even more dangerous because it's so much concentrated. The origin of these hidden operations traces back to a familiar evil south of the border. And we got to remember that it isn't only a cannabis problem that these cartels are part of. These cartels are also the same groups. If they're growing black market cannabis that's tainted with these toxics, they're also trafficking, dirty fentanyl pills that are killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. Dealing with these issues daily, Sheriff Hansel believes he's in the right place.
We see in Humboldt County and in California good versus evil. We see the evil of child abuse, of drugs, of sex trafficking. We see people's worst days every single day, and we have a very difficult time sometimes dealing with that and coping with that. And I believe if you didn't have a Christ-centered life, you can't rationalize that. God has put me here, and this is my mission, the Sheriff's Office, the people of Humboldt County, and when God tells me that it's time to go, I'll go.
From Northern California, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
A remote village gets clean water for the very first time. See how viewers like you helped make it happen right after this.
Finally tonight, in one remote Mexican village, people were getting sick from their contaminated drinking water.
Yeah, that's when CBN's Operation Blessing, with the help of CBN viewers, stepped in to help the issue at the source.
Grandma Asuncion and her husband are raising their granddaughter Daniela in a remote community in Mexico. Their greatest challenge has been finding clean water.
The water situation was harsh. We got stomach sickness. We saw cattle in the water using it as a bathroom. The water was murky, and sometimes it smelled like urine, and we had to drink that.
Then Grandma had to walk long distances to get the little bit of water she could carry. Sometimes it was multiple trips per day.
The path to get water was narrow. We went down hills and then climbed up hills. It was a hard climb that took lots of time. As I got older, it grew more difficult because the load feels heavier.
The water gave me pains in my belly. My tummy hurts every day.
I often wondered if the water would make Daniela so sick she might die.
Then Operation Blessing came to their community and built a rainwater harvesting system that collects and stores up to 1,300 gallons of water. We then added purification and pipes to bring fresh water to Asuncion's home.
Having water in our house means I no longer have to carry it. I am just so happy.
Now I can take a bath because we have enough water. I can drink the water too. Thank you.
Gracias.
And that's going to do it for Faith Nation.
We'll see you right here again next time.